Chant and dance as much as possible in this human form of life.
I would very humbly want to prostrate myself at the lotus feet of my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, and all the Rupanuga Gaudiya Guru Varga from whose work I would be presenting today's discussion. And finally, I would want to offer my very humble obeisances at the feet of all the assembled Vaishnavas and beg for their prayers and best wishes so that I may speak something favorable in line with our Gaudiya Siddhanta and predecessor acharyas. Kindly accept my humble obeisances. Vancha kalpatarobhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. The Bhagavad Gita is a book that is meant for everyone. But the Srimad Bhagavatam is a little more streamlined. It's more refined. It is meant for the Vaishnavas. But then you have the book called as Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is exclusively the treasure, the property of only the Gaudiyas. Chaitanya Charitamrita is that book that is accessed only by the Gaudiyas. It is the treasure of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas. And Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, the guru of our Srila Prabhupada, he would make a very interesting point. Saraswati Thakur would say that if there is a Mahapralay, destruction, and there is complete floods around, and you have three books in your hand, namely Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, and Chaitanya Charitamrita. And Saraswati Thakur later would continue by saying, if the weight of the books is sinking you, then Saraswati Thakur said, drop the Bhagavad Gita. To protect yourself from sinking, he said, drop the Bhagavad Gita, but hold on to the Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita. But even if after dropping the Bhagavad Gita, you're still going down because of the weight, Saraswati Thakur said, drop the Bhagavatam as well. But never leave the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Come what may, even if there is Mahapralaya, Saraswati Thakur said, be ready to give up Bhagavad Gita, be ready to give up Bhagavatam, but there should never be a point in the life of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas where they give up Chaitanya Charitamrita. Kaviraj Goswami makes a very brilliant point. He says, Chaitanya Charitamrita Nitya Karapan Yaha Hoite Premananda Bhakti Tattva Gyan. He says, Chaitanya Charitamrita Nitya Karapan. This book has to be relished constantly, not just for a day, not just for a week, not just for a month, not just for a year, but for eternity, this book has to be relished. And this is exactly what even Shukadev Goswami says in respect with regards to the Srimad Bhagavatam. Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. The Bhagavat is such a book that has to be always taken shelter of. So he says, Chaitanya Charitamrita Nitya Karapan. Why? Someone can have this question, oh, why should I read the Chaitanya Charitamrita always? Yaha hoite premananda bhakti tattva gyan. This book is such that if anyone takes shelter of Chaitanya Charitamrita, bhakti rises in the heart. And when bhakti rises in the heart, there are two things that take place. Prem and ananda. The reader gets unlimited happiness. And when he gets unlimited happiness, and when bhakti also rises in the heart, he gets something called as prema, love for Godhead. So Kaviraj Goswami says, this Chaitanya Charitamrita is such a book that will not just give you happiness, that will not just give you bhakti, but will also give you prema, love for Sri Krishna, love for Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu and the associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So when we were small, I remember my mother would always tell me, she would tell both brothers that if you want to do good in your studies, then be around with people who are good at academics. If you want to top the class, if you want to get good marks, if you want to get good percentage, then be around with those students who are very good so that you can learn the tips and techniques as to how to memorize answers and how to frame your answers. Likewise, when we grow up, we are always told to keep association, to keep the right association, because it's only a matter of time. When we keep association with a drunkard, it's only a matter of time that we are also going to become drunkard. But this just doesn't apply to material logic, but it also applies to spiritual science. In the path of bhakti, there is one thing that devotees are always hankering for lifetimes together. Even in this lifetimes, there are practitioners who have been practicing for decades together. And if there is one hankering that they have in their heart, if there is one desire that they have in their heart, that desire unanimously is taste for the holy name. Every sadhaka who treads on this path of bhakti aspires to have more and more and more taste for the holy name. And our predecessor Acharya say that if you want taste for the holy name, then associate with those people, speak about those people, remember those people who have had akhanda shraddha, one-pointed faith in the holy name. And dear devotees, in the whole of Gaudiya Sampradaya, there is only one personality who has had unflinching faith, akhanda shraddha in the holy name, one-pointed faith. That is Srila Haridasa Thakur. To such an extent, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu declared him as the Nam Acharya, the Acharya for the holy name. And because we as practitioners desire taste for the holy name, Srila Haridasa Thakur will be the topic of our discussion today. Srila Haridasa Thakur was such an interesting personality. When we take birth in this world, it's the soul that goes from one body to another. It's one soul that is going from one body to another body, then going from another body to another body. So it just keeps hopping. It's just the one soul. But in the case of the associates of the Lord, whether Sri Krishna, whether Sri Chaitanya, or whether it is Maryada Purushottam Ramchandra, when these personalities appear, they don't take birth, because where there is birth, there is death. So these personalities, they appear and they disappear. So when these personalities appear to this world, it's not just one personality, but it is a combination of various personalities coming together. For example, Ramananda Rai, another associate of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who was the governor of the Madras province near Godavari. Ramananda Rai was an incarnation of four personalities together, four people coming together in the form of Rai Ramananda. First, Vishaka Sakhi. This is given in Gaur Ganadesha Dipika. Ramananda Rai was Vishaka Sakhi. So if Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Radharani, then Rai Ramananda is Vishaka Sakhi. But if Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, then Ramananda Rai is Arjun Pandava. But if Krishna is in the Sakhiras in Vrindavan, playing with his friends, then Ramananda Rai is Arjun Sakha. And if Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna in Vrindavan, but in Madhurya Ras, then Ramananda Rai is Arjuniya Gopi. So Rai Ramananda is a combination of four personalities: Vishaka Sakhi, Arjun Pandava, Arjun Sakha, that is the friend, and Arjuniya Gopi. Four personalities coming down as Rai Ramananda. Similarly, dear devotees, Haridasa Thakur was an incarnation, or is an incarnation, of three personalities: Brahma, Pralhad, and a third personality by the name Brahma Mahattapa. Now, how did Brahma get into our discussion? What is the connection? Well, after the Brahma Vimohan Leela, the famous pastime Brahma Vimohan Leela, Canto 10, Chapter 14, which happened to be the last translation of our beloved Srila Prabhupada. After the Brahma Vimohan Leela was done, Brahmaji was completely bewildered seeing the opulence of Bhagavan. He initially thought of Krishna as a mere child, just a mere mortal. But then later when he saw that Krishna expanded himself as the cows and the calves and the friends for 1 full year, Brahma was completely bewildered. And then later we see Brahmaji comes and begs at the feet of Krishna and chants various prayers in Brahma Stuti. Tatte nukampam sushamiksamano bhunjana evatma kritam vipakvam ritvakvapubhir vidadan namaste jiveti yo mukti pade sadaya bhak. 10:14:8 prayers of Brahma. Brahma chants various prayers and is beseeching the Lord, my dear Lord, please forgive me. And finally, when Krishna forgives him, Brahmaji realizes that the same Krishna, the same Supreme Personality of Godhead, in the next age, that is Kali, is going to appear as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He is going to appear in the mood of Radharani, in the mood and complexion of Srimati Radharani as Shachinandan, Gaura Hari. So Brahma develops this desire to be an associate of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, Brahma went to Antardvip and did penance for many years to get the attraction, to get the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And finally, looking at the sincerity of Brahma, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally appeared and placed his lotus feet on the head of Brahma, on all the 4 heads of Brahmaji, and blessed him that, my dear Brahma, I bless you that you will take birth in my pastimes as Haridasa Thakur. But because you were bewildered and because you tried to test the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that is Krishna, you will be born in a low-class family. You will be born in a Shudra family. So that is the history of Brahmaji. Second is a personality by the name Brahma Mahattapa. Now, who is Brahma Mahattapa? We have never heard this name. Brahma Mahattapa was the son of a Muni by the name Richik Muni. Now, it's very interesting and very instructing stories, dear devotees. Richik Muni was such an excellent sadhu, and his son was Brahma Mahattapa. And when they would do the puja for the deities, as we know, when we worship the Lord, we have Gandha Pushpa, Dhup, Deep, and Naividya, and then we also offer Tulsi leaves. So when these Tulsi leaves were offered, what Brahma Mahattapa did was, instead of washing the Tulsi leaves, he directly offered it to the Supreme Lord. So generally, it is a custom that Tulsi leaves have to always be washed before offering it to the Supreme Lord. So Richik Muni, who is the father, had told his son multiple times that, oh son, you have to wash the Tulsi leaves before offering. But again and again, he would do the same mistake. And once, when Richik Muni saw this, he became so angry. And he told his son, Brahma Mahattapa, what kind of fool are you? I have told you multiple times that Tulsi has to be offered only after washing. The leaves have to be nicely washed, and then it has to be offered to the Supreme Lord. How many times should I tell you? And he cursed his own son, saying that because of this offense to Tulsi, I curse you that you will be born in a very low-class family. You will be born in a Shudra family. So that was the history of Brahma Mahattapa. And finally, the devotion of Prahlad. So Brahmaji, Brahma Mahattapa, and the devotion of Prahlad coming down as Haridasa Thakur. The intensity, the experience, the devotion, the realization, the practice, the enthusiasm of 3 personalities coming down in one form as Namacharya Srila Haridasa Thakur. So as the Lord had initially planned, Haridasa Thakur was born in a Muslim family, in a low-class meat-eating family. But interestingly, Haridasa Thakur, being the eternal associate of the Lord, he never waited for the Lord to appear, because he thought to himself that the Lord will appear, then he will give the holy name to others. But I already know the holy name, so why should I wait? So our acharyas say, even before the Lord appeared, Haridasa Thakur was chanting the holy name. And dear devotees, we will be very fascinated to know that Thakur Haridāsa was not chanting 16, was not chanting 32, was not even chanting 48. But even before Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance, Haridasa Thakur was chanting 64 rounds of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra every single day. That is 1 lakh every single day before the appearance of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So once it so happened that Haridasa Thakur was in a province, and in the kingdom, the king had invited a snake charmer. We see in the rural India, there are the snake charmers who play the flute, and based on the melody or based on the tune, the snakes, they dance to that melody. And the king or the governor who is there, they gave some dakshina to the snake charmer. So once it so happened that a snake charmer, he came into a province where Haridasa Thakur was also present. And the snake charmer was nicely playing on to his flute. And the snake, hearing this, was nicely dancing to the various beats, to the various melodies of the flute. And every onlooker who was there, they were looking at the snake. But Haridasa Thakur, who was so exceptional and so exalted, looking at the snake, Haridasa Thakur fell to the ground. Now one can have a question, oh, why did Haridasa Thakur fall to the ground? It's very beautiful. In the Gopi Geet, in the 4th verse, the gopis are glorifying the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality. The Braja Gopis, they chant, Pranata Dehinam Papakarshanam Trinacharanukam Sriniketanam Fani Fanarpitam Te Padam Bhujam Trina Kuche Shuna Krendire Chayam. The gopis are glorifying the lotus feet of Sri Krishna. They are saying, Pranata Dehinam Papa Karshanam. My dear Lord, the glory of your lotus feet is anyone who takes shelter of your lotus feet. Papa Karshanam. The sins that are present in his heart get completely destroyed. And Trinacharanukam Shri Niketanam, those same pink, baby, soft lotus feet of Krishna in Vrindavan are running behind the cows. They are running behind the calves. And Shri Niketanam, my dear Lord, those same lotus feet are the treasure of Shri, that is Lakshmi ji. And then they say, Fani Fanarpitam Te Padam Bhujam, my dear Lord, you place the same lotus feet on the hoods of Kaliya. My dear Lord, Kaliya was such a deadly poisonous snake, but you were so merciful that you placed your lotus feet even on the heads of Kaliya. You decorated his hoods by your lotus feet. My dear Lord, when will that day arise when you will give us the shade, the shelter of your lotus feet? So the gopis very beautifully are describing the fortune of the snake, that is Kaliya. So Haridasa Thakur, when he saw this snake, he was reminded of Krishna dancing on the hoods of Kaliya. Because Rupa Goswami, Nectar of Devotion, he says one of the qualities of a pure Vaishnava is Sthavara Jangama Dekhena Deketara Murti Sarvatra Hoy Nija Ishtadeva Spurti. When the pure Vaishnavas, they see anything, whether moving, whether non-moving, whether living, whether non-living, whatever the devotees, the pure Vaishnavas see, Sarvatra Hoy Nija Ishtadeva Spurti, they are reminded only of their Ishtadev, that is Sri Krishna. So in this case, we find Thakur Haridas. He saw a snake, but just by looking at the snake, he was reminded of Krishna dancing on the hoods of Kaliya and chastising Kaliya. So when Haridasa Thakur fell to the ground completely unconscious because of his ecstatic symptoms, there was a so-called Brahmana, a Smarta Brahmana or a smart Brahmana who was there in that province. And when the Brahmana, he looked at Haridasa Thakur ecstasy, he became very envious. He was thinking to himself that I am a Brahmana by birth and he's a Shudra. He's born in a very low class family and everyone is giving him attention. When he has fallen to the ground, everyone is coming him and they're trying to regain consciousness. They're trying to give him more attention, but actually they should be giving me attention. I am a Brahmana. So this Brahmana became very envious of Haridasa Thakur. So naturally what he did is to gain sympathy, to gain some attention. He also imitated and he also fell to the ground just so that people come and give him more attention. So when he fell to the ground, there were two people who externally had the same symptom of falling to the ground, being unconscious, seeing the snake. You see in the Subhashit Malas in the Sanskrit, there is a very nice verse. Hamsa Shweta Baka Shweta Ko Beda Baka Hamsayo Nira Shira Viveketu Hamsa Hamso Bako Bakaha. Externally, a Hamsa and a Baka both are white in color. That is a swan and a crane. Hamsa Shweta Baka Shweta. Externally, both are white in color. Ko Beda Baka Hamsayo. Oh, then what is the difference between a swan and a crane? Because both externally are looking white in color. And then it continues. Nira Kshira Viveketu Hamsa Hamso Bako Bakaha. The ability to separate water from a mixture of milk and water, or the ability to separate milk from the mixture of milk and water, that is what separates a swan and a crane. Because only a swan has the ability to separate water from a mixture of milk and water. So externally, they both look white in color. So similarly, externally, Haridasa Thakur and this so-called Brahmana both had ecstatic symptoms and both had fallen to the ground. But the people in that province, they very well knew what the difference is between real ecstasy and fake ecstasy. What to speak of the king? Even the snake charmer himself understood that this person is faking. So with his cane, he whipped this person because he was imitating someone as exalted as Haridasa Thakur, and that Brahmana left that province. So Haridasa Thakur, even before the appearance of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, displayed symptoms of his ecstasy. After this place, Haridasa Thakur, after this incident, Haridasa Thakur, he changed his base because people were giving him a lot of attention. He did not want to be the limelight. So Haridasa Thakur left the province and then he went to the place called as Benapal. Haridasa Thakur was such an excellent Vaishnava that just by being in contact with Haridasa Thakur, bhogis and rogis would become yogis just by contact with Haridasa Thakur. And naturally it is seen whenever a devotee becomes more empowered, there are people who are envious of such a Vaishnava. He naturally attracts envy because of his higher bhajan or because of his advancement. Envy, dear devotees, in Sanskrit is called as matsarya. Many times we would have heard envy is called as matsarya. It comes from the root word matsya, meaning fish. Now we may have this question, what is the connection of a fish to envy? Why is envy called as matsarya? Well, dear devotees, the reason for this is matsya, that is fish. When a fish is put in the pond, it is generally observed that the big fishes that are there, they become so envious that they eat up these small fishes that are present, because they have this tendency, they have this notion in their heart that if this small fish grows up to become a big fish, if this fish becomes a large fish, then my life in the future is at stake. So that this small fish doesn't become a big fish, the big fishes, they eat these small fishes. So this is a tendency that is seen in the fishes. And that is why this notion is called as matsarya, or it is equated with that of the fish. So because in Benapal, Haridasa Thakur was so advanced and he was in the limelight, there was one person by the name Ramchandra Khan who was very envious of Haridasa Thakur. He was burning in his heart to see that Haridasa Thakur was getting all the praise. Ramchandra Khan had wealth that will go away with time, but Haridasa Thakur had that wealth which will never go away with time. Dear devotees, Krishna consciousness means collecting wealth, but not material wealth, spiritual wealth. Here spiritual wealth means Krishna prema. Krishna prema dhana vina vyartha daridra jivan. Without Krishna prema, without love of God, we are all poverty stricken. Krishna consciousness is that moment where we collect wealth, but not material wealth, not Lakshmi, but we amass transcendental spiritual wealth, that is Krishna prema. Srila Prabodhananda Saraswati Thakur would make a very interesting point. I remember when we were small, my mother had put up a small poster in our study table. So whenever my brother and I we would study, we would see this quote by Srila Prabodhananda Saraswati. And it is such an interesting quote, dear devotees. Srila Prabodhananda Saraswati, he says, if the whole world glorifies me, but Krishna doesn't recognize me, what is the use of that glorification? But on the contrary, if the whole world spits at me, but Krishna recognizes me, who cares for that spit? Meaning that our life is meant to attract the attention of Krishna, whether the world glorifies us or not, whether the world spits us or not. What is important is whether Krishna has recognized us. If Krishna has recognized us, then that is the summum substance, that is the summum bonum. But if Krishna has not recognized us, then that is something we have to work upon. So this movement is meant to amass transcendental spiritual bank account. So this prostitute was sent by Ramchandra Khan because Ramchandra Khan was thinking to himself that Haridasa Thakur is gaining so much popularity. I have to do something to break his popularity. I have to do something to break his purity once and for all. So he called upon this Mataji, the prostitute Mataji, and he told her that I am ready to give you any amount of wealth that you desire. I am ready to give you anything that you desire. My only request is go and break the purity of Thakur Haridas. Do whatever it takes, but break the purity of Haridasa Thakur, because I cannot see Haridasa Thakur getting all the praises. So naturally, in the want for money, this Mataji, she went to Haridasa Thakur, and Haridasa Thakur in the cave in Benapal was loudly chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Haridasa Thakur was chanting the holy name with all the 3 P's: pronunciation, posture, and the prayerful mood, completely absorbed in chanting the holy name. And that was the time when this Mataji walked in, and she looked at Haridasa Thakur, and Haridasa Thakur looked at her, and she made a proposal. She told Thakur Haridas that, oh Thakur Mahashai, this is the perfect time. Look at the atmosphere. It's so romantic. The birds are chirping. The cuckoos are singing. It's the dead of night. There is no one to see. Oh Thakur Mahashai, I have this desire to unite with you. She saw Haridasa Thakur as a piece of flesh, but Haridasa Thakur saw her as an eternal associate of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Haridasa Thakur saw that she eternally belongs to the Supreme Lord, and now she has gone off track. She has been bewildered. So when she made this proposal to Haridasa Thakur didn't say, hey, chi, I cannot do this. But Haridasa Thakur used his intelligence. And Haridasa Thakur said, sure enough, I will fulfill your desire, whatever you have mentioned. But let me finish my rounds. I am chanting 192 rounds. Let me finish these rounds. And then after I finish my chanting, I will fulfill your desire. So by that time, dear devotees, Haridasa Thakur was already chanting 300,000. So before the appearance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Thakur Mahashaya was chanting 64. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared, Haridasa Thakur increased his bhajan. He accelerated. From 64, he went to 128. And now when he was in Benapal, he was chanting 192 rounds. That is 300,000 names. To such an extent, it is said Haridasa Thakur would not sleep. He would not eat. He would not do anything. But throughout the day, his tongue would be vibrating. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Throughout the day, his tongue would be vibrating. So when this Mataji, she made this proposal, Haridasa Thakur said, sure, I will fulfill your desire. But till that time, please sit here, because it is possible that I may finish my chanting. And if you leave, then how can I fulfill your desire? So please sit here. Please wait till the time I finish my chanting. And once my chanting is done, I will fulfill your desire. So this Mataji, she sat down and she was hearing to Thakur Mahashaya. And all night long, Haridasa Thakur was chanting. And when it was morning time, she left, because people had more faith in Haridasa Thakur than the prostitute. Nowadays, if a lady is seen outside the kutir of a sadhu, they will have more faith in the lady than the sadhu. They will look at the lady and say, oh, what kind of sadhu he is. He is having a lady at night. But during Haridasa Thakur's time, people had more faith in the purity of Haridasa Thakur that they would naturally ask, what is a lady doing outside? So because of the fear of embarrassment, that lady, she left on the first night. Then naturally, she came again on the second night. When she came on the second day, Haridasa Thakur said, I am extremely sorry. I know yesterday you came and I also promised, but I couldn't fulfill this desire. But don't worry, today definitely I will fulfill your desire. Please sit here and hear to my chanting. So she naturally sat down. Never was Haridasa Thakur going to agree to what she said. In fact, Haridasa Thakur was very mercifully giving his association to her. So second night, she sat down and she was hearing the Shuddha Naam that was emanating from the lotus lips of Thakur Mahashaya, Srila Haridasa Thakur. And exactly the same thing happened. For the second night consecutively, she just left the cave without having her desires fulfilled. And finally, on the third day, when she came, now, dear devotees, just look at this transformation. 2 nights, she has heard Haridasa Thakur chant. Now, on the third night, when this Mataji comes into the cave, she gives a dandavat. She gives a half obeisances to Tulsi Maharani. She circumambulates Tulsi Maharani. Yani kani cha papani brahma hatyadikani cha tari tari pranakshante pradakshina pade pade Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Shri Tulsi Maharani ki jai. On the third day, she naturally comes, gives her half dandavat to Tulsi Maharani, circumambulates Tulsi Maharani and sits down. And dear devotees, Haridasa Thakur has not even opened his mouth. He did not even speak one sentence. He did not speak any Tulsi Mahatmya. No Tulsi Katha was ever spoken. Just by hearing the Shuddha Naam of Thakur Mahashaya for 2 days, this was the transformation in our heart. Dear devotees, this is a very interesting point. Krishna consciousness is not a movement of change of dress. It is a change of heart. Srila Sripad Ayendra Prabhu, in his one of his famous offerings to Srila Prabhupada in 1997. Very strongly, he was making this point that Krishna consciousness means a revolution of consciousness. It's a revolution of heart. We have to be prepared to change. Externally, the Mataji had the same dress. The dress had not changed, but her heart had completely changed. She had surrendered herself to Tulsi Maharani. So Krishna consciousness means a change of consciousness. It's a change of heart. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, Ache piche sundar bala. He says someone externally may change their dress, but internally if their heart is like that of before, if their heart has not changed, what is the use? But on the contrary, if the externals are pant and shirt, but if the heart is completely transformed, if one is able to surrender to the lotus feet of Sri Krishna with no strings attached, ahaituki apratihata yayatma suprasidati. If someone can have ahaituki bhakti, no strings attached, then even if the cloth is same, he is performing bhakti. So this is an interesting point, dear devotees. Krishna consciousness doesn't mean dhoti and kurta. It doesn't mean salwar and sari. Well, that is important. But what is more important is change of heart. We have to be prepared to change. So this Mataji, her heart was completely changed, was completely transformed. And after 3 days and 3 nights, when she fell at the lotus feet of Thakur Mahashai, she said, "Oh Thakur Mahashai, please forgive me. This envious Ramchandra Khan had sent me to defame you. But my dear Haridasa Thakur, I have understood your purity. I know how exalted you are. My dear Thakur Haridas, I wish to surrender my life and soul at your lotus feet. Please kindly accept me." And this is exactly the reason Haridasa Thakur was sitting. He was sitting in that cave to give her his association. He did not want her association, but he was kindly, very mercifully, he was giving his association to Thakur, to this Mataji. So I'm getting a message, the line is getting disconnected. Can someone kindly confirm?
No, on our side, it's good. We can hear.
Okay, Prabhu. Thank you. Hare Krishna. So after 3 days and 3 nights, she surrendered her life and she begged at the lotus feet of Haridasa Thakur and said, "My dear Haridasa Thakur, please kindly accept me." And Haridasa Thakur very kindly accepted her and gave her this immortal instruction. Nirantara naam lo kar tulasi sevan, achirat pabe tumi Krishnera charan. Oh, my dear Mataji, Nirantara naam lo, may your tongue always keep vibrating the holy name. And kara tulasi sevan, worship Tulsi. Achirata pabe tumi Shri Krishnera charan. Very soon, very fast, you will get the lotus feet of Shri Krishna. So the instruction was very simple. Chanting the holy names constantly and worshipping Tulsi Maharani. So that is why in all our ISKCON temples we find Prabhupada very mercifully during the morning japa, it is always seen that the devotees chant their holy name in front of the Tulsi Maharani. Because Tulsi is bhakti, she is Krishna Pradayini, she is Krishna Jivani, she can grant Krishna to anyone who is sincere. And Haridasa Thakur is teaching this point that Naam should always be done. If we want better results, Harinam should always be done in front of Tulsi Maharani. So this were the 2 instructions that Thakur Mahashaya gave. Nirantara naam lo kara tulsi sevan, achirata pabe tumi Krishnera charan. And he gave her initiation. He gave her diksha. Now at this point, dear devotees, I would just want to emphasize on this point of initiation, on this point of diksha, the relationship between a guru and a disciple. Srila Rupa Goswami in Nectar of Devotion, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, he says the act of taking initiation, just the act of taking diksha constitutes bhakti. Just surrendering one's life and soul at the lotus feet of Sri Guru is bhakti. What does bhakti mean, or what does diksha mean? It can be split into two words, di and ksha. Di stands for divya gyan, means transcendental knowledge. And ksha comes from the root word kshayati, means to destroy sins. That process where sins are destroyed by giving transcendental light, by giving transcendental knowledge, is called as diksha. To reiterate, di means transcendental knowledge, that is divya gyan, and ksha means kshayati, to destroy sins. That process where the sins are completely destroyed by giving transcendental light, by giving transcendental knowledge, is called as diksha. So Haridasa Thakur gave diksha to this Mataji. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he says, Jivera Swarupa hoy Krishnera Nitya Das. Every jiva in this world is eternally a part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. Every jiva is part and parcel of Sri Krishna, but because they have become bahirmukha, because they have turned their face away from Krishna, they are caught up by the material energy. They are caught by the threefold miseries. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he makes this point that there are three types of energies that the Supreme Lord has: Antaranga Shakti, Bahiranga Shakti, and Tatastha Shakti. Now, what do they mean? Well, Antaranga Shakti means the internal energy, the Swarup Shakti of the Supreme Lord, which constitute of the Nitya Parshads of the Supreme Lord, like Radharani, Yashodamai, Nanda Maharaj, Subal, Sridham, Madhumangal, Stoka Krishna, Lalita, Vishaka, etc. They all come under this category of Antaranga Shakti, the eternal liberated part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. Then we have Bahiranga Shakti, which is called as the external energy, which is Durga. And finally, we have Tatastha Shakti. Tata means marginal, on the shore. So the jivas are called as Tatastha Shakti. Why? Because this example is given that if we are standing on the shore, we have ocean to one side and we have land to another side. And because of the current of the ocean, it so happens that sometimes we are pulled towards the ocean, and sometimes it so happens that because of the same current, we are brought back to land. So we do not have a fixed place as such. Sometimes we are in Krishna, and invariably, as Prabhupada says, most of the times we are in Maya. So because we are in Tata, the marginal, on the shore, we are called as Tatastha Shakti. Krishna bhuliya jeev bhagavan chakore nikatastha maya jare japoti adhare. One of the famous verses that Prabhupada would quote. Eternally we all belong to Krishna, but the moment the jiva becomes bahirmukha, he has turned his face away from Krishna, japoti adhare. The material energy Maya immediately catches hold of that personality. And when Maya catches hold of that personality, that person is in darkness, is in ignorance. And dear devotees, the biggest pitfall for a jiva is not knowing that he is in darkness. The question of going from darkness to light comes only when you know you are in darkness. The question of asatoma sadgamaya, tamasoma jyotirgamaya, going from darkness to light, going from tamas to jyoti, comes only when you know you are in darkness and there is light, and the aim of human life is to go from darkness to light. But this arises only when you know you are in darkness. And for this reason, dear devotees, Sri Guru, he provides transcendental light. He provides divya gyan to the heart of the disciple, through which this darkness can completely be eradicated once and for all. People live their whole life not knowing who they are. They identify everything in and around them. Like, this is the laptop, this is the table, this is the book, this is the Wi-Fi, this is the pen stand. But who am I? I don't know. For everything else, they start with the self. But when it is actually time to start with the self, they are lazy. They identify everything in and around them. But when it comes to their own self, they're completely clueless. For 80 to 90 years of their lifetime, they live without knowing who they are, without knowing what their relationship is with Sri Krishna. So Sri Guru comes to the life of the disciple to kick out this illusion. Sri Krishna, he thinks to himself that the Jiva has turned his face away from me, but I will never give up the desire for having the Jiva in my spiritual abode. So Krishna thinks to himself that let me speak different scriptures. He speaks to Uddhav, he speaks to Vivaswan, he speaks to Maitreya. There is the conversation of Shukadev and Parikshit. So many conversations take place. His conversation with Arjuna, only so that the Jiva somehow or the other he hears. Kahin se to sun le, kahin se to hriday parivartan ho jaye. So Krishna, different places he speaks, only so that the Jiva somehow or the other hears this message and turns his face towards Sri Krishna. When that doesn't work out, Krishna, he takes different incarnations. He first comes as Matsya in the incarnation of a fish. But then someone may say, fish incarnation, okay. Oh, but look at Varahadev. Look at his strength. Varahadev is so powerful. With his tusk, he lifted Mother Earth. Look at his strength. While there may be someone, they may say, Varahadev, okay. But look at Vaman. He's so calm. He's so peaceful. He's so shant. While there may be someone, they may say, Vamandev, okay. But look at Krishna. Krishna is so sweet. He's eating dirt. He's playing with his friends. He's holding the tail of the calf and going around Vrindavan Dham. Look at the sweet Sakya and Madhurya pastimes of Krishna. But there may be someone, Krishna, okay. But look at Ramchandra, Maryada Purushottam, Eka Patni Vrata. So Krishna comes in different incarnations so that our mind gets attracted to any one of those incarnations. First, he speaks at different places. That doesn't work. He comes in different incarnations. When that also doesn't work, Krishna thinks to himself, it is time that I personally walk in the life of the Jiva to kick this illusion once and for all. Because this Jiva has amassed illusion for lifetimes together. Bundle of illusions, junk after junk after junk after junk for lifetimes together. If the dirt, dear devotees, if the dirt of all the villages, all the towns, all the districts, all the countries of around the world, if all the dirt is collected and taken at one place, still the consciousness, our consciousness is more dirtier than all those dirt. That dirt can at least be cleaned by about 10,000 men. But this dirt is very difficult to clean. And Krishna understands. And for this reason, he personally decides to walk down in the life of the Jiva to kick this junk, to kick this illusion once and for all. And that personality who walks down, who is not different from Sri Krishna, is Sri Guru. And the process that he provides is Diksha, transcendental knowledge. Sakshad haritvena samasta shastre uktas tatava yata eva sadvi kintu prabhoryar priya eva tasya vande guru Shri Charanar Vindam. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur very clearly makes this point. Who is Sri Guru? Sakshad Hari. He is not a mere mortal. He is not like you and I who's been pushed into the material world. He is Sakshad Hari. He is Krishna himself who has come down only to provide his association, to provide his mercy. So dear devotees, this was what Haridasa Thakur was doing. Haridasa Thakur was not a mere mortal, but he was serving in the capacity of Sri Guru and providing his association to that Mataji and gave her Diksha. And from that day onwards, dear devotees, she was known to the world as Haridasi. Because she was initiated by Haridasa Thakur, she was called as Haridasi. And the best part, we have always heard about her past as to what her profession was. But after the change, after the transformation of consciousness that was there, Haridasi from that day onwards started chanting 128 rounds of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra every single day. Not 64, but 128, 2 lakh Hare Krishna Mahamantra every single day. This was the power of Haridasa Thakur. This, dear devotees, is the power of Sri Guru. That is why it is said, Lava Matra Sadhu Sangha Sarva Siddhi Hoy. If one is as sincere as the Mataji, then even 3 nights is more than enough for complete purification. And now, such a guru like Haridasa Thakur, in Kali, Krishna is very kindly benedicted by sending Srila Prabhupada down. Just imagine, dear devotees, one guru in the form of Srila Prabhupada, one self-realized Acharya, decides to walk down to this material plane, writes many books, goes on multiple morning walks, delivers multiple lectures, speaks on the dictaphone for years together, and releases all the jiva suffering in this world once and for all. He gives the Divya Gyan to every single person so that this illusion can be dispelled once and for all. This is the glory of Srila Prabhupada. This is, dear devotees, Guru Tattva. Sri Guru comes into our life not with any agenda, but completely selfless, only to grant his mercy in our lives, only for our purification. His Grace Udayananda Prabhu, disciple of Srila Prabhupada, in one of his memories, he narrates a very sweet remembrance. It was the 1976 Ram Navami festival, and it was a busy day. Prabhupada was at Krishna Balaram Mandir that day. And in the morning, Srila Prabhupada had his regular Bhagavatam talk. He glorified Sri Ram. And then in the afternoon, Prabhupada had his translations. And then later in the day, there were many guests who came to visit Srila Prabhupada, because generally in Indian customs it is seen Lord Ram is always worshipped. He's always unanimously considered as God. So many guests came in the evening to meet Prabhupada, and later at night, at about 7 o'clock, Srila Prabhupada had a Pandal program in Mathura. About 25,000 people had assembled to hear Srila Prabhupada speak. And Udayananda Prabhu remembers, he says, Prabhupada for about 2 hours non-stop at the age of 80, he glorified Sri Ram without even sipping a drop of water. And Udayananda Prabhu says, I was amazed seeing the enthusiasm that Srila Prabhupada demonstrated. And after the whole day's program was done, after everyone was completely tired, they again came back to Krishna Balaram Mandir at about 12 o'clock at night. And when they came back, because in those days we do not have the Brahmachari ashram, so all the resident devotees, they were staying at Fogla ashram, which we still have in Vrindavan. So all the disciples of Prabhupada, they were staying at Fogla ashram, and Prabhupada was at Krishna Balaram Mandir. So Udayananda Prabhu, he remembers, he says that interestingly what had happened is that day, because it was his first trip to Vrindavan, he had gone to Loi Bazaar and he happened to eat a jalebi. And because this was the first time that had caused indigestion, because he was not accustomed to the Indian food. So that had got complete indigestion. And when at night everyone was sleeping, he had sleepless night. He would multiple times go to the washroom. And it was 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. And then finally he decided that this is not going to work. I'm not going to get sleep. So better what I do is I walk to the temple and I start chanting my japa. So Udayananda Prabhu took his bath and nicely with dhoti, kurta and tilak, he walked to the Krishna Balaram Mandir from Fogla ashram. And Udayananda Prabhu remembers, he said, when I entered Krishna Balaram Mandir, I saw Prabhupada's quarter, the light was still on. It was 2:40 at night. The light was still on. So Udayananda Prabhu did not open the door, nor did he knock. From outside, he just peeped. And Udayananda Prabhu, when he was saying this, he had tears in his eyes. He said, when I saw Prabhupada at 2:40 at night, after full day's preaching, after translations and after meeting so many people, and after doing a Pandal program for 25,000 people, at 2:40 at night, here was Prabhupada with his dictaphone saying, so Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur to this comments, 2:40 at night, Prabhupada was translating. And Udayanand Prabhu says, when I saw this, I had tears in my eyes. I saw Prabhupada, why? Prabhupada, you have done everything. You have preached everywhere. You have fulfilled the desire of Chaitanya and Nityananda in the form of the Adbhut Mandir. You have fulfilled the desire of Bhakti Vinod Thakur. That when that day arrives, when the white people will dance with all the Indians, with the brown bodies, Srila Prabhupada, you have fulfilled everything. You have translated everything. You have made multiple devotees all around the world. Why, Srila Prabhupada? Why are you straining yourself? You can go and take rest. Leave it up to your disciples. We will do it. But of course, he didn't say it. But from outside, he was seeing everything. And Udayanand Prabhu was saying, that day I realized who a Sri Guru is. Guru means someone who is completely selfless. For the sake of his disciple, Sri Guru can go to any extent to deliver him. And here was Prabhupada at 2:40 at night was translating, having sleepless nights, only so that the whole world gets benefited by the Bhakti Vedanta purports, and the whole world can once and for all transcend this material nature and go back home, back to Godhead. This is Srila Prabhupada. This is Guru Tattva. And not just Srila Prabhupada, dear devotees. This holds true for anyone who is serving in the capacity of Sri Guru, including our dearmost spiritual masters. Any spiritual master in this world is a representation of the ultimate spiritual master, who is Sri Nityananda Prabhu. Whether it is Haridasa Thakur, whether it is Srila Prabhupada, whether it is Saraswati Thakur, or whether it is our revered spiritual masters. Sri Nityananda Prabhu is the powerhouse. He is the Akhanda Guru Tattva. All the power, all the Shakti for all the Gurus is emanating from Nityananda, because Nityananda Prabhu is Adi Guru Nityananda. All the Shakti is coming from Nityananda. So now someone can have this question, maybe this is exaggeration. Well, Prabhu, we understand that Guru is important, Guru is selfless, but maybe this is exaggeration that, oh, without Guru, there is no hope, Guru is selfless. Maybe this is exaggeration. So many places Acharyas say, maybe it is possible that this is a little too much. Now, if we have this doubt, dear devotees, Vrindavan Das Thakur kicks this doubt once and for all. In Chaitanya Bhagavat, Vrindavan Das Thakur, he narrates a conversation between Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu and a Brahmana. Gauranga Mahaprabhu is talking to the Brahmana, and Gauranga Mahaprabhu makes such a strong point. Gauranga Mahaprabhu is referring to Nityananda and saying, Se tahare priti kare, se kare amare. What does this mean? Se tahare priti kare means anyone who loves Nityananda, who is Adi Guru. Se tahare priti kare, se kare amare. Anyone who loves Nityananda, anyone who respects Nityananda will very naturally get my mercy. The road to my heart is through the lotus feet of Nityananda. And what does Gauranga later say? Se tahare priti kare, se kare amare. Satya, satya, satya vipra kohila tomare. My dear Vipra, my dear Brahmana, I am not exaggerating. This is truth. This is truth. This is the real truth. Satya, satya, satya vipra kohila tumare. My dear Brahmana, I am saying this truth to you, that without Nityananda Prabhu, without Adi Guru, without Sri Guru, no one can make any advancement on this path of bhakti. This should dispel, this should kick all doubts in our heart, because this is coming straight from the lotus lips of Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu. And he says it thrice. Satya, Satya, Satya Vipra Kohila Tumare. Without Nityananda Prabhu, without Guru Tattva, without Sri Guru, no one can make any advancement in bhakti. Our path to Radha and Krishna, our path to the heart of Chaitanya is through the spiritual master. It is spiritual master who acts as the wire medium and connects the jiva to Sri Krishna. So in this way, dear devotees, Srila Haridasa Thakur was serving in the means of Sri Guru, and he delivered the Mataji who came to his shelter by giving her diksha, by giving her transcendental knowledge and uplifting her consciousness once and for all. And to such a great Vaishnav, when he departs in the Rai Ramananda Samvad, the conversation between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Rai Ramananda, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is asking this question, my dear Rai Ramananda, what is the biggest distress a jiva can face? What is the biggest suffering a living entity can face? Dukkha madhye kona dukkha hai guru tar. Of all the sufferings, Rai Ramananda, which is the highest suffering a jiva can face? And to that Rai Ramananda replies, Krishna bhakta viraha vina dukkha nahi dekhi para. My dear Sri Chaitanya, being separated from the Vaishnavas, being separated from the pure devotees of the Lord, this is the highest pain that we can face. All other pain, losing an iPhone, losing a laptop, losing job, not getting our green cards filed, this is not anxiety, this is not suffering, Rai Ramananda says. He says the highest form of suffering is being separated from a pure Vaishnava. When a pure Vaishnava leaves this world, that is the highest suffering a jiva can take. And naturally, when Haridasa Thakur left this world, the associates of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu were deeply pained because Haridasa Thakur was that personality whose tongue always vibrated the chanting of the holy names. And when Haridasa Thakur was about to leave, Kaviraj Goswami says, just like Bhishma Dev had Ichha Mrityu, similarly Haridasa Thakur, he left on his own accord. Bhishma Dev left on his own accord. He waited till the time Krishna came. Similarly, Haridasa Thakur waited till the time Chaitanya Mahaprabhu held him in his arms. Purveyena shuniya che Bhishmera maran. Just like before we have heard how Bhishma Dev left, similarly Thakur Mahashaya left on his own accord. It was not that Yamaraj took his life air out, but Haridasa Thakur, because of his bhajan, had so much strength that he left on his own sweet will. So when Haridasa Thakur left this world, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally did the last rites, personally did the samadhi for Thakur Mahashaya. Why? Because Haridasa Thakur was always chanting the holy name. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu showing the world that if anyone chants the holy name constantly, then I will personally hold the jiva in my own arms and do the last rites for that living entity. Haridas Achila Prithivira Shiromani Tahavina Ratna Shunya Hoila Medini. Kaviraj Goswami says, who is Haridasa Thakur? Haridas Achila Prithivira Shiromani. He is the crest jewel of Prithvi. Tahavina Ratna Shunya Hoila Medini. Now all the jivas in this world are bereft of this jewel by the name Srila Haridasa Thakur. So we pray to Haridasa Thakur that, my dear Haridasa Thakur, you exemplified this point of Nirantara Namlo. You exemplified this point of Kirtaniya Sadahari. And my dear Thakur Mahashai, if you kindly shower your blessings upon me, if you bless me, then hopefully in the course of eternity, in some lifetime, there may be a day may arise when even my tongue will eternally keep vibrating the holy name. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will come down to perform the last rites for me. Having said this, I would very humbly want to prostrate myself at the lotus feet of Haridasa Thakur, Srila Prabhupada, and all the assembled Vaishnavas at Fort Lauderdale for very kindly tolerating me for over an hour. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Srila Haridasa Thakur ki jai.